Hi guys, so a video today on more sort of long-term considerations for your training choices and exercise selection and structure of your programs, while also keeping in mind, the things that we need to maintain, a strong core and obviously a pain-free lower back. So, I'm a big believer in that, especially in the foundational stages, things like McGill's Big 3 are very effective exercises for building the foundation components of what we call, proper core stability. And when we talk about core stability, we're talking about movement in 3 planes. So, number one, we talk about the sagittal plane, which is forward and back stability, which is what we're learning when we learn that brace with a McGill curl. Again, one of the most effective ways to learn that technique and really get some skill with it. Then we have frontal stability, which is basically lateral stability, so side to side, the ability to control your body from sideways bending forces. So things like side bridges, suitcase carries, that sort of stuff is great tools to kind of build that foundation. And then of course then we also have rotational stability. So sort of torsional forces, things like, bird dogs are a great example. There's other sort of variations that we can sort of build on from there. So once you've kind of built that foundation, I quite often get the question that, should you just always be doing things like the McGill Big 3? And again, it depends. So the McGill Big 3, if we look at it, is a great foundation for pain-free day-to-day movement. And I look at that as, mastering those 3 exercises or alternatives of is kind of like the minimum you want if you want a strong, a back I should say, is strong enough for sort of day-to-day life and tasks. That's kind of your minimum. So kind of over and above that, which is what I try and encourage my clients to do, is to, if that gets you so far with that bank balance that you need, let's over-engineer you and give you as much as possible so your training is focused on building as big a bank balance as possible so that your back and your core can do more work before things break down. So if your long-term goals is to build a back and core as strong as possible, there's a few different ways we can go, and it all depends on kind of your goals, which is important to know what your goals are at the start. So a good coach can steer you towards exactly what you want in the most effective way. So for example, traditionally people think about strength exercises, they obviously go to barbell exercises because the barbell is a tool that facilitates lifting the most amount of weight possible for most people. But it does have some drawbacks, and again, it's considerations we can either take into account by going a completely different route, or we can add things on top just to kind of make sure we're covering all our bases. So what do I mean? So for example, we look at, say, just a regular high bar back squat. So we're in, obviously we have to learn to use our brace. So brace is on. Let me get that good squat technique. So we build that brace stronger, and also we're building, hopefully, if we've got a good technique, building functional legs and hip movement. But downside is that because of the nature of the bar, we're only kind of working stability in that sort of forward and back plane. We're not getting any sort of sideways or twisting action, so that could be limiting if you really want to keep the spine as strong as possible. So what's a different way we can think about training and exercise selection that'll let us get the most benefits possible, but also not only maintain the things that we've built with McGill Big 3, but also further enhance them. So this is where I like things like kettlebells, because generally anything that's kind of heavy and a bit awkward is going to challenge you a lot more than necessarily just a barbell. And again, it's not to say don't do barbell work, it's just that unless you specifically need barbell work because either you train powerlifting, you want to maximise hypertrophy or overall strength, in which case you can add this next stuff in as accessory work. Just doing this stuff might be more sort of time effective and efficient for you because it will cover all your bases, and especially if you're limited for sort of time for training. So if we look at like a kettlebell, so if I take one selection, one of my favourite exercises is like a kettlebell sort of front squat or goblet squat, depending on how you hold it. Similar things like what we were doing with the squat before, like this. So it's a bit heavy, it's a bit awkward, it's sort of in front of us. And again, we're sort of further challenging that stability front and back, which again is very important. So again, very similar to like we would do with a McGill curl, but obviously a bit harder because now there's a big movement involved in it as well. But what we can do, to think about it a bit further, is we can now add on even more challenge and get more benefit. So to do that, all we have to do is take the kettlebell, load it onto one side. It's like a single-sided front squat. Same thing, we're still doing a squat movement. So we get all the benefits of strong hips and legs. But now, because the weight's on one side, I'm challenging lateral stability at the same time that I'm challenging that front to back stability. So I'm getting the benefits of a McGill curl and a side bridge while I'm doing squats. So again, if you're limited for time, doing a workout, we've got sort of 4 to 6 sets of those. It's going to cover a lot of bases in a short amount of time and give you slightly more benefit than necessarily a barbell would. But again, not to say don't use the barbell, just that maybe if you need to use the barbell because again, you're powerlifter, hypertrophy, or just overall total strength in big lifts like squats and deadlifts, maybe adding some of this as accessory work or on a separate day will still let you enhance those components that you've built with things like McGill Big 3, but also further enhance it because now that's obviously way more challenging than a McGill curl or a side bridge, much bigger exercise. And again, for people who are limited for time and don't need to be tied to a barbell, doing this sort of stuff with kettlebells, we kind of unevenly load and it's a bit heavy, it's a bit awkward at the same time, is going to be much more efficient and effective at building a strong back and core and giving you all the things that you want for a small amount of time invested in training. So again, just considerations, because it's something that comes up quite a bit with my clients because they tend to, we go for the McGill Big 3 and then they always ask, oh, do I always have to just be doing these exercises? And it's, well, no, if you're careful, clever with your exercise selection and planning, you can build and further enhance those components with bigger exercises. Obviously, a bit more interesting, but they'll kind of challenge you further and again, more time efficient and effective. And again, that can apply to upper body stuff as well. So if you imagine, versus being sat down in a shoulder press machine versus doing a standing barbell press versus doing like a standing or kneeling single arm press. So again, you can use that same progression that you're not just challenging in one direction, you can add in lateral or twisting stability on top of it as well and get more benefits or more bang for your buck and less time spent. So again, just considerations with sort of training. It's things that I look at, and that's why I always like to have for my clients, get a clear idea of what their goals actually are. So already from day one, I'm starting to think about what we're going to progress them into long term with their training.